welcome back to Crit and Crit, everyone. I am Scint.
I'm Axion.
And we are continuing our trip through Final Fantasy V as we overanalyze the ever-loving snot out of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. So, Axion?
Yes?
What would you say if I told you that I had been lying to you your entire life?
I would say that would be a bit of a stretch considering I've only known you for about 10 years.
But magic is real, and I've decided to keep it from you, even though magic is completely awesome and can fix most of my problems, because the plot says it's really important that I lie to you about this thing.
Yeah, I'm going to need a lot more thorough explanation than that.
We're talking about the concept of the Masquerade. Usually only comes up in, First World, so, Secondary World usually in writing refers to, not Earth. You've made up your own setting for that. So First World urban fantasies set on Earth, modern-day society, or, historical society, where magic exists, the supernatural has been there, has always been there, but it is kept strictly separate from the normals so it doesn't freak them out or cause a panic. And Harry Potter leans very, very heavily on this, and we kind of see that for the first time really being explicitly enforced in the setting in the Chamber of Secrets.
Yep. When Harry gets in trouble for someone else casting magic in his vicinity because magic is not allowed to be performed in front of muggles.
Which I actually do find interesting, just because of something we haven't really talked about with this. There's no mention of anyone coming in to wipe the memories of the poor muggle couple that got the pudding splattered on the floor right in front of them. Though it could have been they honestly didn't see it, they were around the corner. But how do you tell when you need to send out the memory wiping squad? Because this book also establishes we have spells to wipe your memory, which is great after looking at someone's internet history.
Oh dear.
You know that people in the Harry Potter world today would absolutely be using that. Oh, that's a regrettable meme I didn't want to click on. Obliviate.
Yes, if it hadn't been made quite clear that most wizards don't know anything about modern technology. Unless they are
Are you going to tell me Hermione can't meme? Muggleborns will know all sorts of things. A modern-day Muggleborn taking their iPhone onto campus would be amazing.
Oh, this is going to hurt.
But yeah, so the misuse of Magic Office and Muggle Artifacts Office's Ministry of Magic are introduced in this book a little bit more clearly when we get Harry's letter, and we get to hear a little bit more about Mr. Weasley's job. So we know that they have wizards specially trained to deal with what happens if the Muggles find out, or if dangerous things get their way into Muggle hands. And their job is to make sure that if it does happen, it is quickly and quietly contained, and they retain no memory of the event that could cause problems for wizards in the future. Which I believe is meant to be for the Muggles' protection because of the widespread havoc that can be wreaked with magic, but I kind of think in a sense that also means it's for the wizard's protection because, burn the witch is a thing.
Yep.
And you've seen how the Dursleys react.
Yeah, though I remember correctly, the books do say that that's kind of more of a thing of the past.
I could probably see that, with Muggle technology having outpaced as quickly as it did. I'm not sure how many killing curses you would need to match the atom bombs of World War II. So, it would kill without a trace, but I think it's single target, which is not exactly efficient if you're trying to wage widespread death and destruction. There are other spells for that.
Yep.
But, yeah. So,
Fireball!
Does Fireball exist in Harry Potter?
I would be very surprised if something equivalent doesn't.
You know, I actually wonder how many times they've had a Dungeons & Dragons nerd end up at Hogwarts and just immediately anger every single person in the school because they can't resist asking when they learn to cast Magic Missile.
Okay,
Can you imagine? Can you imagine
system.
Snape dealing with someone walking to potions class and asking, "Is this how I learn to make cure serious wounds, sir? Do I need to go gather components for it? Do I need to roll for success?"
I think that's bad. Imagine 90s nerd kid who grew up on something like Final Fantasy.
Oh boy. Yeah, just anything to do, like, because that would happen more and more in the modern day as nerd culture gets more and more mainstream and accepted, of just all sorts of outcast kids, which I think that tends to be who ends up at Hogwarts, would be the outcasts of the Muggle world.
Yep.
So, yeah, you're not going to really get your normal all-American jock students to
just
Hogwarts.
Even in these first 2 books, think of all of the Muggle-born students that we've encountered. We have Harry, who was an orphan, hated by his caretakers, lived years stuck under the stairs, and then barely tolerated because his aunt and uncle basically feared him. And everything, of course, we know about Harry. Then we have Hermione, who's basically an expert nerd. And while she has a happy home life with parents who clearly care about her, even if they don't really understand anything that's currently going on with her situation, she is still very much a bookish, nerdy, quiet bookworm. And then we have Colin Creevey, who's this small,
mousy, squeaky-voiced photography nerd.
Yep.
But, yeah. So, anyway, the Masquerade is just the idea that we must keep magic in the magic box and muggles in the muggle box, and the two must never meet. If you are coming to the magic world, you leave your muggle life behind and you learn magic, and you leave the magic at magic school when you go back home to the muggle world. It is the way. We will keep doing this forever. It is, quote-unquote, safer for everyone, and it avoids uncomfortable questions, such as, what do you mean I'm a wizard? No one has told me anything about this. Please explain everything. I don't understand what's happening.
Which then comes back to bite them when they go to wizard school and they know nothing of the culture or the basics that wizard kids would have seen from their parents and older siblings growing up.
Yep. So, yeah. There's the idea that, muggles can't handle dealing with magic, which, let's be honest, I think that's entirely accurate. Muggles can't handle when the store runs out of coffee. Which is an entirely mundane and explainable event. So there's something to be said for that, but on the other hand, the idea that it's for everyone's safety, well, they have mentioned that, you have a lot of magic supremacy, pure blood only wizards who would be very happy if they could completely wipe out the Muggle population or enslave them with magic and so on and so forth. People like Voldemort. So not telling the Muggles that there's someone out there who basically wants them to die for the crime of existing doesn't exactly, make them safe or able to prepare for that. Though on the other hand, how do you prepare against some of the curses that are thrown at you? Yep. So it's, But yeah, and it's something that I've always wondered about how it gets handled in various books, because there's such an emphasis on maintaining the secrecy and the Masquerade, no matter how much trouble it gets your main character in, because magic is happening around them, and they have no means of explaining it because they can't tell anyone about the magic.
Yep. It kind of gets glossed over in this book because Harry doesn't have anybody, or in this series rather, because Harry doesn't have anybody that he would want or need to tell about this sort of thing. If he went to the Dursleys and told them, hey, there's an evil wizard who's trying to eradicate all the magical people, first case first, they probably wouldn't believe him. They'd probably say he was making things up and trying to use his wizardy stuff to scare them, and that they wouldn't suffer for it, he would be going without dinner today. But if they did somehow get convinced, if he found some way to prove to them that it was true, then what are they going to do?
Well, it's actually a weird example of Dursleys because the Dursleys haven't been on the other side of Masquerade, but they know it exists because of Petunia.
Right.
They know that magic exists because Petunia's sister, Lily, went to Hogwarts. She knows. She has always known that magic exists. She has always known there's another world that she's not a part of. So, yeah, they absolutely believe that Harry is a wizard. They just don't want him to be. So they try to make sure he has no access to it. So there's a difference there.
Yeah. Is that where I'm supposed to go? No. Where did the big floaty city go?
I have no idea. I haven't really been looking at the map because that's been your job. Does it move?
No, it popped out of the ground over here in this thing, and then it vanished. And
I have no idea.
Anyway.
But,
so,
yeah.
And Hermione's parents are kind of in the same boat. Thanks to Hermione, they now know wizards exist. And is it this book where we get to see them for a short time?
I think it's not till the third book.
Okay. Yeah, I remember one of the stories basically has them show up and they just look completely out of their depth.
Yeah, and it's really easy to see like why you'd be out of your depth if you've never known about this.
I mean, wouldn't you?
Yep. Which kind of raises the question as to whether or not the Masquerade is a good thing. Over the scope of the 7 books of the Harry Potter series, basically, yes it is. In setting, it is maintained. Most Muggles do not get to find out about the situation, no matter how out of control it gets. So it's not really, the status quo does not change, and that can be for better or for worse. I'm not sure it's for better, just because of all the havoc that can be wreaked and how irresponsible magic can be used, but we're not weighing in on my thoughts on that. We're weighing in on just the consequences in terms of the setting.
Right.
So, yeah. In this book, I'm just going to focus on like how it's been enforced with Harry getting the letter from the Misuse of Magic office basically saying, hey, if you keep this up, you're going to get expelled, which means we'll take your wand away and you have no means of using magic ever again. Versus with Arthur Weasley, was, hey, why did you enchant this car? We're going to investigate you at work to make sure you're not making more of a hash of this because you're one of our people who's supposed to be fixing this mess, not making it worse.
On that note,
it's taken very serious for them.
Yeah, on that note, though, I do want to point one thing out. Book 2 introduces us to Nocturne Alley, aka Wizarding Black Market.
Yep.
I have no doubt that there are people who have been expelled from Hogwarts who are still doing magic. We know this because we meet Hagrid, who is keeping his broken wand snapped when he was expelled in his umbrella, and it still works.
Yep. Which actually, this is a tangent. I wonder why they never offered to let him finish his schooling, rescind the expulsion when the actual culprit was caught. But I don't know. That's just maybe.
Do you want an honest answer, or do you want me to try and formulate an in-story answer?
Nah, just let it go. It's just me coming up with it.
I mean, the honest answer is Rowling forgot.
I can see that. But yeah, it also probably wouldn't make too much difference for Hagrid, considering he'd be in his 60s at that point. And, okay, yeah, here, you were a third year, we're going to put you in class with the other 13-year-olds. This is not going to cause any problems. But, yeah, it'd just be awkward there. But, yeah. So, it's taken very, very seriously when Harry and Ron are caught flying the car to campus. because it gets in the papers. Muggles see them, and that means the Masquerade is bent. They probably obviously sent people out to wipe their memories and make sure things got, investigated properly, but yeah.
I don't want to fight you right now. I do not remember where I'm supposed to go. Now would be a good time for some Masquerade to pop out and tell me, hey, you are supposed to be over this way.
So, yeah. And you kind of wonder how long the Masquerade could be maintained with all of the Muggle-born half-blood students who go back to their partially or fully Muggle families and tell them, how was school? Da-da-da-da-da-da-da, something about all the kids, like, many kids were attacked by a giant snake monster that made them unable to move for 6 months.
I imagine there is some kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Conversation had between
the parents of a brand new wizard who's never been in a family with wizards.
Yeah, they have that conversation with that conversation with the parents saying, "Hey, you were Muggle-born. Your child is a wizard."
Here's what that means. Here's what that means for you. Here's what you need to do behavioral-wise, etc., etc., etc. That would be kinder than just sending them a letter that says, "Hi, you've been accepted into wizard school. Nope, this looks like a spam letter, honey. This is really weird, so we're gonna throw it into the fire." Why did it come back again the next day in the exact same handwriting? This is really creepy.
Okay.
Because we know if you don't actually respond to the letter, they will keep sending it.
Yep.
And sending it. And sending it.
So they probably sit down with the parents and have this conversation of, hey, here is the situation with your child. You are going to be required to keep this quiet. You're going to be required to not let your child do certain things without proper wizard supervision. All that fun stuff.
Yep.
And
like we're just speculating at this point. This
right.
is not actually laid out anywhere in the series for us to find.
Yeah.
Probably because it's not really relevant for Harry.
Yeah. But it seems the logical way a bureaucracy such as is depicted in the Harry Potter books would operate.
On the one hand, yes. On the other hand, I kind of think that that's a little too much credit to them, considering how we've already seen them make a hash of the justice system and how the bureaucracy functions with Harry's misuse of magic warning.
While yes,
so it's like, if it's just an automated thing.
While yes, the Masquerade seems to be one of the things that they take particularly seriously.
Which is what I'm saying. They screwed up a notice to somebody who they thought had broken the Masquerade, but they got it wrong. So they clearly don't have all eyes on all things at all times to make sure of that. Which makes me wonder, I don't think they have the personnel or, the competence to send out a licensed magical therapist to help your parents through getting a Muggle-born kid to school.
Yeah,
like, it doesn't seem to mesh with what we've seen of how flawed the bureaucratic system already is. They want to maintain the Masquerade, but they're basically having to rely on the honor system for it to work because the systems they have in place are not foolproof.
And I can agree to that, especially because of the way we see Mr. Weasley. How he is
enchanting everything he can get his hands on because it's fun.
Well, yes, but also how he describes his job and how busy and overworked he is and how little he's getting paid. Definitely gives the impression that he is overworked and underappreciated.
Yeah. So he's a typical government employee with way too much on his plate to actually get through everything. So his job is to help make sure that muggles don't get on the wrong side of the masquerade, because there are bored wizards, like his sons, who want to enchant things because it's funny, but these things sometimes end up in muggle hands, so you have, like, the example he gives is a teapot goes haywire and starts spraying tea on everyone in the room. So they had to go out and fix everything. Yeah, they're trying to keep the masquerade under wraps with a very severely strained system, which I still find interesting given that, if Hogwarts size is any indication, the Wizarding World isn't actually that big, which makes me think there are probably multiple Wizarding schools in Britain, just to cover the fact that otherwise you have 40 new wizards every year, and that's a very unsustainable population rate. But we've talked about that before.
I was about to say, we already know there are multiple in Europe. Whether there are multiple in Britain, Rowling seems to imply no, with her later projects, that no, Hogwarts is all there is for the British Isles, possibly including Ireland.
Like, I think that Hagrid mentioned in the first book it's the best wizarding school in Britain, but I don't remember offhand, and I can't remember where I put the book right now to check, so I'm just not going to look right now.
And she may well have just changed her mind over the years, because she does that.
Yep. But, yeah. So, we get to see pretty heavily the consequences for casting magic around muggles, letting them find out that there is magic around them in any way is basically grounds for being shunned from wizard society forever. Because you will be dangerous, you can't be trusted, and you are an active liability. If you cannot be trusted with using magic, you will be excised from the school, you will not be able to learn magic, you will have your wand taken away, you will not be able to perform magic, which basically means you cannot function in wizarding society. A little bit harsh, and I think it would be counterproductive, because if you take a wizard who's never experienced Muggle society and you expel them from wizard society, you're going to have a crazy person telling people who are, you know, just normal Muggles all about wizarding society, and the odds say that one of them is eventually going to believe them and go looking for trouble.
Yep. And like I said, there is wizarding black market. There is a way for people to get access to magic after they have been stripped of what is essentially the legal methods of magical education and access. There are ways around that particular limitation.
But yeah, it just... The more the series goes on, the more you can see how tenuous the Masquerade really, really is. Which we can talk more about when the specific instance and specific books come up. We're in that fun situation where I can take this topic and stretch it over the whole series, but we're trying to go book by book, so I need to restrain myself. But in this book alone, we see problem with the car, we get to see Harry and Ron making a ruckus at the train station when they can't get into platform 9 3/4, we get to see the flawed bureaucracy when Dobby basically sets Harry up as a scapegoat for his hover charm, we get to see a bunch of Muggle-born kids and half-bloods actively being targeted by the ghost of a vindictive pureblood supremacist who's a half-blood himself wizard. And the more these things keep adding up, the more you realize that the Masquerade is wafer thin, and it's kind of a miracle that it doesn't shatter by the end of the series.
Right. And to kind of break from the subject a bit and jump way ahead, if I remember correctly, there is some implication with Fantastic Beasts that the Masquerade either did break or came very, very close to breaking at some point in the recent past.
Okay, we're not talking about Fantastic Beasts because they're not very good, and also we're talking about the books, not the movies.
Right, but there was I'm just talking about the general idea, which is why I said I was jumping way ahead.
Yeah, like, I kind of want to say that, like, focusing on the books is the best way for this to work, because, those movies fall into the trap of serial escalation. You need to make everything bigger and badder than what came before, or in this case after, because it's a prequel, So you have to move away from the school setting, and you want to make it epic and so on and so forth. So you're setting it up with a huge backdrop with really, really hefty implications that this could fall out. And you basically have to pull a Deus Ex Machina at the end of the first one to maintain the Masquerade in any way. So it's like it kind of feels like the whole thing fell apart and she had to scramble to make it work with the confines of what she'd already established. Because it would have made more sense for it to break, which would then invalidate the very premise of the Masquerade in the books proper. So, yeah. It's not going to go well if you want me to start bringing the Fantastic Beasts movies into this, because
I did not
have
want
opinions.
to go onto a full tangent, no.
Good. We'll just say they suck and leave it at that, and if you disagree with me, you're objectively wrong.
Tell us how you really feel.
I did, without the swears. But anyway, yeah, I think we kind of rambled in circles on the Masquerade for a while, and without going into examples from future books, I kind of feel like we're going to keep chasing our tails if we don't end this.
Yep, and I've kind of wandered randomly around this entire episode, so we didn't make a whole lot of progress.
Final thoughts?
If I find out in some theoretical future that there is a Masquerade in the real world, I'm going to be exceedingly disappointed. Because,
would you be disappointed, or would it explain an awful lot about the past couple of years? Because this could absolutely be some wizarding kid trying to fix things and getting a monkey's paw.
Good night, folks.